All right, we've talked about recruiting a ton. Richie, I want to talk a little bit about Pat Surtain. He's getting a lot of credit here, which I do think is deserved. I think that, you know, what Florida State did, we had a great question in the Discord today, and it was, what percentage of credit does Pat Surtain get? Because a lot of these recruitments, certainly Lester, certainly KJ, preceded his time in Tallahassee. Like Florida State was already recruiting these guys before he got there. And so how much credit does he get versus how much credit, because Florida State was already really warm with some of these guys before then. And I'm interested to hear your take, but my thought on that is I think that Mike Norvell knew, I think that from the time that the Hunter thing happened, right? And then Coach Woodson was here another year, and I'm not putting all the Hunter stuff on Coach Woodson, but I do think he owns a large part of it. I think Norvell owns a large part of it too. Our NIL being weak probably owns a large part of it too. But I think that Norvell personally handled a lot of DB recruitments so that when a defensive backs coach was hired, he would be able to kind of, I wouldn't even say hand those off, but he would be able to kind of facilitate that relationship a little bit more than just, oh, you got a new guy, let's roll. And so I think that that's massive. And that's why Coach Norvell has been so close with KJ, with Lester, with others that are kind of in that boat as well. I think that, well, I don't want to say that. I'll say it at the end of this because I don't want. We're all living high right now, so I don't want to upset people. But I think that has been big. I also think that what Pat Surtain brings from a coaching and development perspective is exactly what every recruit wants to hear. And I think that you have to have a good relationship, and you have to be able to relate to these kids, and you have to be able to again, just have that relationship. I don't know how to expound on it anymore, but I think that what he brings from a development side is the top of what any DB in the country would want to hear. And I think that almost helps more than, the relationship side of things. The relationships are really, really important. And I'm not trying to slight him on that at all, but I just think that what he can sell from that perspective is huge. I also think that what Norvell is able to tell kids is, guys, you got the relationship with me. Trust me, I'm not bringing in some slouch. I'm bringing in a 10-year NFL vet. I'm bringing in a guy whose kid is the best DB in the league. I'm bringing in trust me on this. And I think that helps. I think him facilitating that hire is huge. And as many people doubted the hire, Richie, as many people had a lot to say about, oh, he's not proven, and oh, can he recruit? Oh, can he do that? There aren't very many people saying that much anymore about Pat Surtain.
Yeah, I think when you talk specifically about, Lester and Bolden, it's a classic case. Like, give Norvell the win, but Surtain gets the save, right? He came in, did his job. Mike kind of set him up for success, and he came in and closed. And, oh, by the way, it doesn't hurt that his son is arguably the best cornerback in the entire NFL right now. And, obviously he went to Alabama, but everybody knows, and it's an easy sell if you're Pat Surtain Sr., I developed my son. I turned him into a 5-star that got to Alabama, and then he took care of his business from there. Yeah, he was a phenomenal hire. And, I think a defensive backs, it's a low-risk hire, right? You want an extremely good recruiter and, someone who can develop, but we knew he could develop players. So that box was already checked. It's how well could he recruit? He was an all-pro in the NFL one year. This is a guy that can say, I've done everything you guys want to do. I did it at a smaller school than you, still got drafted, had a successful long career, and look at my son now. He is the best in the league at his position, which I helped teach him and develop him as a kid. It's just, I really loved the hire at first. And if it continues to pay off like this in the recruiting, because I'm not worried about the development of our defensive backs. The recruiting is what I want to see. And when you're at a school like Florida State, you're always going to recruit really well at the defensive back position, no matter who's the one doing the recruiting. But I'm just really excited to see what continues to happen.
Yeah. Certainly not going to complain getting 2 5-stars in 8 days. But, I mean, I think it just shows, and this is no slight at Pat Surtain at all. So but when I say this, I think people are going to take it that way. So I promise you that's not what I'm doing. But if you come in here and work your tail off, which I believe he's doing, and you come here and you can show that you can develop defensive backs, Florida State's always going to recruit really well at defensive back. And I'm not saying that that's easy, or I'm not saying that Surtain's job is not difficult. I'm just telling you, if you work your butt off and you can halfway relate to a kid, you're going to recruit defensive backs because it's Florida State. I mean, we had the greatest ever that played here. And I know some of you fans get mad at him now, but we had the greatest ever that played here. We got the greatest 2 defensive backs in the league right now that played here, right? Play the Jalen clip, Harlan. I think that Florida State, I don't want to say it recruits itself, but if you just bust your ass, and I think that Pat Surtain is doing that, you're going to get recruits. You're going to land guys. And I think that's what's happening. That's what you're seeing go on. And Nathaniel just wants to be back up in the lead. So
you're
Nathaniel,
a recruit and you ain't going to Florida State. What you doing?
Nathaniel gets back up into the lead tonight. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. But yeah, I think that's a lot of what it is. And Richie, we already mentioned them, but let me say this. And I think, again, Pat Surtain, that hire, he shut a lot of people up. And Mike Norvell proved how good of a hire that was. And how elite Mike Norvell was hiring. I think we said this when he was hired back in February, but last year we weren't able to make the hires I think that we wanted to because we weren't hiring from a position of strength. This year it is different, and I do believe we're hiring from that position of strength. I think that Florida State, Mike Norvell, could have hired anybody they wanted to at that defensive back position. There were former players vying for that job. There were NFL guys vying for that job. There were a lot of people. People were tying a certain Miami assistant to that job. There were a lot of people, but Mike Norvell went out and got the guy that he wanted, and that happened to be Pat Surtain. And Pat Surtain, what the Noles have done on the trail, really for a lot of this. I mean, I love the Red Morgan take. I think we've got a lot of good defensive backs, and I think we're going to continue there. We already talked about Jamari Howard, obviously. You know, the 2 guys, the 2 5-stars that just committed. It's obvious that Norvell's, that hire was a slam dunk. And I'm with you, Richie. I'm more and more and more excited to see what comes in the future. Because again, I don't think we're done at DB. We talked about Jamari Howard. I think that if today was signing day, I think he commits to the Noles. I think he signs with the Noles. A lot of time between now and then, but you certainly can't hate the results. What he's, got hired in January, February, and it's now August. So 6-7 months, and he's gotten 2 5-stars. I don't know if anyone's ever done that before. So I'll fight with the Gator fans on Twitter all day, but I think we might have the best defensive back coach in the Big Three, and he's not even coached it down yet. So, Richie, any other thoughts on Pat Surtain before we go on?
No, just like you said, a phenomenal hire, and I don't think a hire that would have happened if Florida State had gone 7-5 last year. Mike Norvell put a product on the field that was attractive enough to pull him away from the Miami Dolphins, which you don't just leave an NFL coaching job. I know he wasn't, one of the main coaches. He was kind of, the equivalent of a college analyst, but to get him on the field at Florida State, and man, once he figures out what he's doing on the recruiting trail, which it already seems like he has, he's going to just get any guy he wants. Just a phenomenal hire by Mike Norvell.
Nathaniel says, my bad, still drinking from last night's commit. LOL. What'd you have to drink, Nathaniel? How awesome would it be if Surtain turned the current secondary around and made them one of the best in the country? Let's get him some noise going there.
Touchdown, Florida State! Touchdown, FSU!
No, the sound makes me feel good. The sound, I like the sound. So, yeah, okay, so I do think I think that this is going to be one of the best secondaries in the country. I think that Florida State now they got to go out and prove it, but I do think that you brought in the best corner in the country in
Cypress,
Fintrell Cypress. We'll talk about fall camp here in just a second, but I'm hearing that Cypress might not even be your day one starter because of how much Green and Jones have jumped up. I think that having Pat Surtain there to be able to coach the young guys and really be able to get the absolute most out of Akeem Dent, who has been around forever and needs to improve. I love Shaheem Brown's athleticism. And then we'll talk about the JUCO kid, Barker, who is, we'll talk about him in just a moment. Let me not jump ahead too much. But yeah, I mean, I think that this secondary, they've got to stay healthy and they've got to play up. But with what the defensive line is going to do, and the pressure they're going to put on people, I mean, your secondary is only as good as your defensive line. And if a quarterback has all day to throw, then you're not going to look very good. But I think the secondary has a great chance with, again, the help of the D-line, Pat Surtain's coaching, to be, top 20. I'd take a top 20 secondary because I know the defensive line is going to be top 5. So you balance all that out. I mean, you're looking at a top 10 defense. So, yeah, I think that's definitely possible. Richie, at the end of the year, how do you rate our secondary?
Well, let's put it this way: if we're talking right now about Central Cyprus, an All ACC player from a year ago, potentially not starting for you. So I feel good about my secondary based on that alone. But yeah, we'll see what happens by the end of the year. Like you said, the defensive line is going to make their job a lot easier. Braden Fisk is just a monster. And, I don't know if Mike Norvell is ever going to win a race again at the end of practice because that man just flies for a guy that size. I'm just excited overall. I know we're going to get into camp in a little bit. But yeah, if you're talking about having an all ACC player from a year ago, potentially not even starting for you, that's probably a good sign.
Yeah. So shout out Pat Surtain, obviously absolutely crushed the hire. Norvell did. Let's give some love to Gramco and then let's move on. TheGramco.com. Hey, they're doing a huge gummy push right now. Richie, I don't know if you know this or not, but they've got not only the Delta 8 gummies that we've always kind of given love to, they've got a CBD gummy as well, and they've got a new Delta 9 gummy. So that's the big boy. That's the real stuff. Delta 9 now available as well. TheGramco.com. Make sure that you're supporting. Appreciate them for all that they do for us. They are Noles. They are huge supporters of FSU. Appreciate them for their support. Use code TJ25 for 25% off at checkout. TheGramco.com, TJ25 for 25% off at checkout. Go get you some gummies today.